She is the most boring spirit in the world. Her name is Shirso. Even though she knows children can't see her, she still loves to hang upside down from trees just to scare them. She thought no one would ever be able to see her. But one day, she met a boy named Natsume. At that moment, Natsume was being bullied by his classmates. They threw rocks at him and mocked him, calling him a child without parents. Seeing this, Shirso became furious. She knocked some bugs off the tree and scared those kids away. Standing on a branch, Shirso laughed proudly, not realizing that Natsume was staring right at her. By the time she noticed, Natsume was already gone. That was when she realized the boy had actually seen her. To make sure she wasn't imagining it, Shirso started waiting for Natsume at the same crossroads every day. To her surprise and joy, Natsume really could see her. From then on, she wouldn't stop following him. She would appear out of nowhere, always trying to startle him. Every time Natsume got scared, she would burst out laughing with delight. And so, Shirso spent every day wandering around the small town, searching for Natsume, but in the process, she slowly began to understand the boy. Natsume had no parents, he lived with distant relatives, and he possessed the ability to see spirits. His classmates called him a freak, and everyone avoided him because of it. Shirso wanted to play with him in her own mischievous way, but Natsume finally asked her why she kept following him. After saying that, he walked away. It was the first time Natsume had ever spoken to her, but Shirso didn't understand human emotions. She couldn't grasp what he meant, nor the kind of story this lonely boy was hiding inside. When Natsume returned to the uncle's house where he'd been taken in, he was abandoned once again. Before that, he had already been rejected by several relatives, perhaps out of guilt. His uncle casually gave him an old piece of clothing that once belonged to his own son. It was the first gift Natsume had ever received from family. Even though it smelled faintly of dust, Natsume loved it dearly and hugged it to sleep every night. Even in the middle of summer, he would wear it when he went out, boasting that it was a present from his uncle. But that was when Shirso suddenly appeared again. She scared his classmate and dirted the piece of clothing Natsume treasured the most. Finally, Natsume broke down and cried. After that day, he never walked down that road again. Yet Shirso couldn't stop thinking about him. She transformed into a small cat and went to the place where Natsume used to spend his time. Natsume didn't know the cat was actually Shirso. He adored the little creature and held it tightly in his arms. For the first time, Shirso felt warmth from a human being, a feeling she had never known before. Natsume envied how the cat could survive on its own. If only he could live independently too. Then maybe his relatives wouldn't treat him like a burden, passing him from one house to another. But Natsume never blamed them. He had always been that kind, gentle child. For the first time, Shirso was moved by human emotion. She wanted to stay by Natsume's side forever, but fate took another turn. A distant uncle suddenly appeared and decided to adopt Natsume. When Shirso saw the uncle's wife, dressed in heavy makeup and bright clothes, she knew Natsume wouldn't find happiness there either, but there was nothing she could do. They never got the chance to say goodbye properly. After that, Shirso waited every day under the big tree, hoping for the boy's return. She tasted winter snowflakes and watched the cherry blossoms bloom each spring, but Natsume never came back. Slowly, she learned to live alone again. Whenever she saw a child fall, she would turn into a little cat and go comfort them. But children as gentle as Natsume, there would never be another one in this world. Lost in her thoughts, she didn't notice Natsume had already found her. It had been more than 10 years. Natsume was now a young man, but he still remembered the spirit named Shirso who once stayed by his side. Back then, he couldn't understand why she acted the way she did, but as he grew older, he finally understood her kindness. In that moment when they embraced again, Natsume realized something else, that the little cat from his childhood had always been Shirso. The cherry blossoms had fallen and bloomed again. The snow had drifted and melted away. And beneath the same old tree, the long-awaited reunion finally arrived. Once, Shirso had used mischief to approach the lonely boy. Later, she turned into a cat to keep him warm in silence. All the unspoken affection was hidden within the years of waiting. Now that Natsume finally understood her tenderness, and she had met the one she'd been waiting for, it became clear that the most touching thing in the world is not eternal companionship, but that even after all these years, you still remember me, and I am still here, waiting for you. The girl's name was Tsubame. She was originally a swallow. When she was still a baby bird, she accidentally fell out of her nest. Later, a human found her and gently placed her back inside. But from that moment on, She carried the scent of humans. Her parents despised that human smell, so they abandoned the nest and left her behind. One by one, her siblings died. In the end, only she was left. Her heart was filled with unbearable pain. Eventually, she transformed into a spirit consumed by resentment. But one day, a man appeared and brought her food. He came every single day. Perhaps he thought she was a stray cat or dog, but that simple act of kindness made Natsume feel warmth again, something she hadn't felt in so long. Little by little, her hatred began to fade. Not long after, the entire village was swallowed by a flood. The villagers had no choice but to move away, and she, too, fell into a peaceful slumber beneath the waters. Years passed, until this year's great drought. The sun dried the riverbed, and the submerged village resurfaced. By coincidence, Natsume happened to pass by. Without hesitation, Tsubame possessed his body. Using it as a way to leave the bottom of the dam, Tsubame told Natsume that she couldn't leave the reservoir on her own. So she had borrowed his body. The reason she did this was because there was someone she longed to see, even if it was only from a distance. With Natsume's help, they finally found the man's address. Tsubame was overjoyed. She could already smell his familiar scent from afar. She ran toward him, her heart overflowing with joy. She waved her hands and spoke excitedly, trying to tell him everything she had held inside for so long. But the man wasn't Natsume. He couldn't see spirits. At that moment, Tsubame's heart shattered. The man she had missed for countless days and nights was standing right in front of her, yet he couldn't see her. In the end, Tsubame simply waved her hand and whispered goodbye to his back. From that day on, she perched on a large tree near his home. Every time the man appeared, she would stand up, calling out to him loudly, even though she knew perfectly well that he couldn't hear her voice. Still, she was happy just to be near him. Natsume saw all of this, and he noticed that Tsubame's spiritual power was fading. Even maintaining her human form was becoming harder and harder. He wanted to help, but there was nothing he could do, until he heard that the spirits were preparing for a festival. At the festival, there would be a special game. The prize was a yukata. If a spirit wore it, they could become human for one night. Natsume's heart stirred. He decided to try. After a fierce struggle, he finally won the game against a group of powerful spirits. Covered in cuts and bruises, he brought the yukata to Tsubame. When Tsubame put it on, her smile lit up like sunlight. After thanking Natsume, she said goodbye and went off to find the man she loved. That night, rain began to pour. The old village sank beneath the water once more, and Tsubame never returned. Natsume didn't know whether she had found the man or not. He couldn't stop worrying, so he went to look for him. When he finally met the man said that during the festival, he had seen a girl in a yukata. She didn't say a word. She only stood there, quietly looking at him. The man added that they had taken a photo that night. In the picture, Tsubame was smiling. Her wish had finally come true. He was the most pitiful little fox spirit deep in the mountains. He lost his parents the moment he was born, while other cubs were still drinking milk. He had already learned to catch fish on his own, but because he was weak, he was often bullied by stronger, mid-level spirits. They would beat him for no reason, just as he was about to be beaten to death. Natsume suddenly appeared and saved him. It was the first time the little fox had ever seen such a powerful human. He admired Natsume deeply, yet out of instinct, he ran away. From that day on, the little fox began sneaking to Natsume's school, watching quietly from a distance. What he loved most was Natsume's gentle smile, and how Natsume always cared about the feelings of others. But while the little fox was completely entranced, Natsume suddenly noticed him. Panicked, the little fox turned and fled in terror. When he got home, he couldn't stop wondering, could Natsume be a spirit too? If that were true, then he could live together with Natsume in the forest. The little fox decided to keep following him, but Natsume didn't want to get too close to spirits. Such encounters often brought him trouble, so he left the place immediately, leaving the little fox frozen in confusion. Not long after, heavy rain began to fall. Natsume hid beneath a tree, waiting for it to pass. Quietly, the little fox appeared and handed him an umbrella. Natsume smiled softly and said, "Thank you." It was the first time the little fox had ever spoken to a human, and the first time anyone had ever thanked him. When he returned home, he stood before his mother's grave, telling her that he was no longer useless, that from now on, he would grow stronger and become a man as strong as Natsume. But the same two spirits from before appeared again. This time, the little fox finally fought back. However, That only enraged them even more. Just when it seemed he was about to be killed again, Natsume appeared once more and drove them away. The little fox begged Natsume to let him become his familiar spirit, to always stay by his side, but Natsume refused. He didn't want to bind the little fox with such a contract. He wanted to be his friend instead, but the day of parting soon came. Natsume returned home, where his adoptive uncle had handmade a set of teacups. He even offered to give one to Natsume. Natsume loved his current family deeply. Meanwhile, the little fox was quietly working hard for their next meeting. He wanted to become stronger. Strong enough to go into the human world and find Natsume, but this time, he encountered a giant spirit. The spirit promised that if the little fox caught fish for him, he would grant the little fox any wish he desired. The little fox believed him. He worked tirelessly, catching fish day after day, but once the spirit had eaten his fill, he simply flew off into the sky. Before leaving, the spirit tossed him a single pill. It was a magic pill that could turn the little fox into a human, but only for one day. Yet for the little fox, one day was enough. Following Natsume's scent, he crossed mountains, rivers, and train tracks, chasing all the way into the human world. By the time evening came, he finally reached Natsume's home, but at the last moment, he stopped. From inside, he could hear Natsume's happy laughter, and that sound alone was enough to fill his heart. Still, he couldn't resist peeking through the door crack. There he saw Natsume, surrounded by his loving family, smiling brighter than ever before. The little fox smiled too, happy, and yet a little lonely. He turned and quietly walked away, but Natsume, looking toward the door, seemed to sense something. The little fox was truly happy for Natsume, but the loneliness, that belonged to him alone. He wanted to return home to the mountains. When he lifted his head, Natsume was already standing right in front of him. Seeing Natsume's gentle smile, the little fox could no longer hold back his tears. He leapt straight into Natsume's arms. Natsume promised that he would visit him in the mountains often, and finally, he carried the little fox back to his old home. He was the most devoted spirit. Just one glance, and he could no longer forget that girl. He didn't want her to know his feelings, yet he couldn't suppress the emotions inside. In the end, he wrote his feelings on a chalkboard. He had always lived in an old tree up north, but one day, humans cut the tree down. Helpless, he had no choice but to move south, because there was another tree just like it there. To save time, he decided to take a shortcut through the human world, but as he passed by a human house, an invisible force suddenly stopped him. No matter how he tried, he couldn't get out. He didn't know that the house was protected by a magic circle. Anxious and confused, he suddenly heard a girl's voice coming from inside. It turned out that Toru had been troubled by other spirits, so she used the magic circle her grandfather had left behind, one that allowed her to see spirits. But by accident, this spirit had stepped right into it, and that was how they met for the first time. The spirit asked the girl to help him leave. He could tell that Toru was very scared, so scared that she couldn't even lift her head. Yet even so, she agreed to help him. It was the first time he had ever looked directly into a human's eyes. He didn't know how to describe the feeling, but deep down, he knew one thing: he would never forget it. Toru searched through her grandfather's old notes on charms, and drew a map that would show him the way out. She handed the map to him. He told her that if he made it out safely, he would leave a branch of flowers at her door as proof. Following the map's directions, he really did make it out. As promised, he placed a flower branch in front of her door. He saw Toru pick it up. At that moment, her face bloomed with a radiant smile. He froze. He didn't understand. What was this sudden rush in his chest? At that moment, he felt as though he didn't want to leave anymore. After that, he would quietly watch the girl from her window every day. But slowly, he began to realize that Toru couldn't see him at all. Even if he stayed, it would only bring more loneliness. His heart grew heavy and conflicted. He didn't know how to describe this feeling, or how to put it into words. In the end, he wrote his emotions on a chalkboard. He told Natsume, "If you ever see what I've written, please keep it a secret." Eventually, he left, but behind that quiet departure was so much longing and regret. The spirit finally slipped away, yet the words he left on the chalkboard still carried warmth. He had found new direction through Toru's kindness, and Toru, through his silent protection, was left with a tender memory by the window. Some encounters don't last forever, but like a spring breeze, they gently brush past each other's time, leaving behind traces of warmth,